When it comes to investing your money, almost all of the advice that you're going to find on this topic is always going to be country specific because the world is not built for digital nomads. So in this video, as someone who has been a sort of a nomad, like living a nomadic lifestyle for the past 2 years or so, I want to share like sort of my philosophy on how I invest my money as a sort of nomadic person living around the world. We're going to talk about how to think about taxes, where your different types of investment income are going to be taxed, and how all of this plays into your lifestyle as a nomad, how I think about where and which countries to hold my investments in, which asset classes I invest in, and sort of special considerations specifically for digital nomads when it comes to investing in all kinds of different ways. But first, it's important to talk about what is our goal when we are investing money. Well, for most people, it is to one day reach a point with your portfolio where the returns on your portfolio alone could pay for your lifestyle. Now, in most normal people's cases who are just living a normal life, like working a traditional job in one particular country, especially a Western country, you're usually calculating this based on the cost of living of your country, like your Western city, which is super expensive. But the benefit of being a nomad is that if you can get to the point where you're earning your money location independently, but you can live in places where, number one, you can build your wealth much quicker because you're not having to pay half of your income in taxes, and or number two, you can live in places where your cost of living is actually much lower, which obviously also makes you build wealth that much faster as well. But what it also does is that the requirement for how big your portfolio has to be in order for that portfolio to be able to pay for your lifestyle is also going to be much lower. And this is really why being a nomad, like being location independent around the world, is such a hack in this day and age. Not only do you most likely have a higher quality of life, not only do you get more for your money right now, but you also build wealth faster, and you need much less to live your dream lifestyle just of your investments. Now, with that being said, I now want to discuss the three main asset classes that most people invest in, which is stocks, real estate, and cryptocurrency, and sort of the things you want to consider specifically as a nomad, as well as how all of this is going to play into your tax situation. The first asset class is going to be stocks. For most nomads, like almost everyone I know, the platform that they use, and that I use myself personally as well, is called Interactive Brokers. Now, it's a US-based investment platform, but it's actually available to people residing in pretty much all across the world, including the UAE, where I have my personal residence. Now, it's really great because you can pretty much invest in whatever you want in US dollars, and even if you move your residency later on in your life, you can still keep your money here because it's not just for US residents or something like that. Now, I still mainly invest in the US market, so the S&P 500, but I've also diversified across funds in Singapore, in Saudi Arabia, and things like this, because as much as the S&P 500 has been doing super well recently, I sort of don't believe that it can possibly keep doing this well long into the future. But here, like, being international doesn't really affect my choices in terms of which funds I invest in, but the one key consideration you want to take into account is that if you're living in a country where your main residence is in a country where the US does not have a tax treaty, in these cases, you actually want to avoid investing in what are called US domiciled funds. So funds that are domiciled in the US. Why is that? Because all of the dividends that are paid from direct investments into US stocks or US domiciled funds are going to have a withholding tax that the US is going to apply to it. So what I do, and that I recommend to you if you are living in one of these countries, like for example the UAE, is that you invest in Irish or like UK domiciled funds, where you can still invest in the US market, but the fund itself has their like tax domicile in Ireland, because I believe Ireland does have a tax treaty with the UAE, or at least they don't apply these withholding taxes. So that is one key detail that many nomads will not take into account that you definitely want to consider. But other than that, investing in stocks is a really good option specifically for nomads, simply because it doesn't tie you into one particular place and it doesn't have the kind of hassle that something like investing in real estate might have. That takes us to the next key asset class, which is real estate. Now, I personally haven't yet invested in any real estate, but I am highly considering doing this in the next couple of years, so I thought I'd include this here anyway. Now, there's pros and cons with investing in real estate as a nomad. On one hand, owning real estate as a nomad can be more tricky because depending on your residence, you might not have access to mortgages. Like, it might be a bit more tricky for you to buy property in certain countries. In fact, certain countries, especially in Asia, don't even allow foreigners to own property, or some countries allow owning apartments but not land. But the other big cons of real estate and why I haven't invested in any yet is that number one, it really ties you down into one location. Of course, you don't have to live there, but it sort of gives you a strong tie into one particular place. And as nomads, we like the freedom of just moving around, which is why many of us do rent. And number two, buying property, because it's like a big chunk of money, unless you're super wealthy, it most likely takes a big chunk of your net worth and sort of ties it into one specific location. And number two, I don't like the idea of a large portion of my net worth just being stuck in one property. And number three, obviously owning real estate is gonna come with certain hassle. Whether you live there or whether you rent it out, it's not as easy and hassle-free as owning something like stocks. But nevertheless, eventually I do want to own a couple of properties. Number one, for the purpose of just having homes in the kind of places where I want to live. In case things go down, at least I still have a home that I can access to in these places. And number two, simply for diversification. I currently have almost all of my net worth in just the stock market, and I just, like I said before, I just don't believe that the S&P 500 can keep returning such high returns as it has been recently. So just for diversification, I do want to put some of my net worth into real estate. And recently I've actually learned of a way in which you can get the benefits of real estate while sort of avoiding all of these cons that I just talked about. Now, there is this platform called Binary X, who are also actually the paid sponsor of this video, that actually allows you to invest in property through fractions starting from as little as $50. This allows you to become a co-owner of properties like this one and benefit from rental income and rising property values at the same time. And whenever you want to sell your shares, you can just offload them on the platform's internal marketplace at any time, all while having zero hassle because Binary X handles property management and everything like that for you. So the way this works is that Binary X essentially buy these properties and they set up a separate legal entity that actually owns these properties in all kinds of locations around the world. And getting started is as easy as ordering a coffee. You just do a quick facial verification to confirm your identity, top up your wallet with USDT, and you can start browsing the available properties on the marketplace and start investing. When you're viewing a property, you'll be able to see detailed info about each property, like expected returns, the number of investors, and when the investment period ends. And if you're wondering if this is safe, then well, absolutely. They use blockchain technology to ensure that everyone gets their fair share. And like I said before, you are actually the legal owner of these properties. So I really like what they're doing. Obviously, this is not investment advice, but just as an option, this is very interesting. So if you want to get started with Binary X, you can use the promo code DUOMAS to grab a $20 free welcome bonus when you buy your first share. Plus, you'll get 3% cashback on all of your investments over $500. Now, briefly talking about crypto. So crypto for me is something that I have a small portion of my net worth in just because I want to be exposed to it, but I sort of don't know enough about it and I don't believe in it so much that I'm willing to take the volatility and the risk. So I have like, I don't know, maybe 5% of my net worth. Well, recently it's been going up, so I think it's now a bit higher of a percentage. In terms of how to do it, I have money on this platform called OKX, and actually also recently certain banks in the UAE allow you to buy crypto directly from your bank account. I made a video about this previously, so I have some crypto via that as well. Now, with that all being said, how does this all work in terms of taxes? For stocks, when you sell stocks, so the capital gains in these stocks is generally, and of course there's exceptions, this is not tax advice obviously, but generally they're going to be taxed wherever you are tax resident. So even if you own, let's say, US stocks or US funds, the capital gains are not going to be taxed in the US because you own shares in a US company. But in terms of dividends, dividends are actually usually classed as sourced wherever that company is located. So if you own US shares that are US domiciled, on any dividends from these stocks, the US will actually by default charge what is called a withholding tax, because they essentially say like, well, this income is from the US, therefore we have the right to tax it, just how it works. That is unless you are resident in a country that has a tax treaty with the US, but most tax-friendly countries are probably not going to have that. So this is exactly why I recommended you before to own shares and funds that are domiciled outside of the US. In terms of real estate, all of your investment income, be it the capital gains from selling it or your rental income, is thought to be sourced wherever that property is located. So this is something that could significantly affect where you actually want to invest in real estate. I remember I was researching the Spanish real estate market a while back because I was considering maybe I'll buy a property here or something, but then when I saw the taxes that they would charge for non-residents on the rental income and the potential capital gains and all the other regulations around this, I basically said like, yeah, I'm not going to be doing that. So that is something you definitely want to consider wherever you are buying real estate. And in terms of crypto, it's usually just going to be wherever you are resident. If you sell your crypto, you pay capital gains wherever you're resident, which is exactly why many people are, for example, leaving the UK and then selling their crypto to get 0% tax on those gains. Although you need to consider, for example, if you leave the UK, you sell your crypto, but then you return back to the UK within 5 years, the UK is going to deem that those capital gains are still taxable in the UK. So there's always specific considerations, specifically depending on where you're from, where you're going to. If you want help in any of this, you can reach out to my partners down below. You can book a free call. And if you're specifically a crypto investor, then generally the best place for you to move to with your crypto investments is going to be Dubai and the UAE. If you're wondering why, what is the process to actually leave with your crypto, can you get 0% tax, things like this, I made a full guide, a full video on this specific topic, which you can watch right here, which goes into more detail specifically on crypto. So watch that video next, and I will see you in the next one.